Okay, good morning. We have gone live. Welcome to the extraordinary meeting of Council today. What we are going to do is just go through a few formalities and then we will get into the body of our report. So I do want to just officially welcome everyone that is part of this today. Like I said before, it is going to be relatively informal. We will have our council officer just introducing the report. Then I have a schedule. We have 8 submitters that will talk to us today. So I will give each of you the opportunity to talk to us. And then the reporting officer does have the opportunity to respond to issues raised. But like I said, please don't be nervous about this. This is us listening to you and all of us working together to get an outcome. So without further ado, any apologies? I don't see any because we just were in another meeting where everyone was there. So I assume all councillors are here. No declarations of interest. I do not have any leave of absence. No acknowledgements and tributes. No public input and petitions. No extraordinary business. No notice of motion. If people text me, I always know there is something going on in the background. Okay, so I ask councillors, we all go to page 4 on our meeting report. I do want to thank Tyler for putting this report together. Tyler, I am going to open the floor. I can't see you. Is it Tyler or Diane that will speak to us today? Diane, if you guys can just indicate to me who will open up this report. Tyler, I can see you've unmuted yourself. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes or so just to talk through, just to get everyone on the same page. And then after that, I will move to our hearings. So thank you, Tyler. The floor is yours.
Bye-bye. Morena koutou. The report that's being tabled today seeks to summarise the submissions that were received as a result of the notification of the lease for the new pump track, which was notified on the 18th of December. It also seeks to assess the options that are available to council in response to the submissions. We've identified 4 options to proceed. 2 involve granting the lease for the site as it was advertised, and 2 to explore options for a new site. Considering the implications of each, the report recommends that council adopt option 2 to grant a lease for site A, as shown in the attachment, and to recommend that mitigations to neighbouring properties are reflected in the lease's terms. But that's probably about it from me. No new information's come to hand since the report was published. It's I'd say council today is balancing its role of protecting and enhancing public land with the need to develop fit for purpose community facilities on those. So it's a really important democratic process to hear from our submitters, and it's important that we do what's best for whole of community. So I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you for that, Tyler. So councillors, everyone had the opportunity to read the report, take a look at the maps, and also read the submissions. So today we have the privilege to listen to submitters, and that is part of our job, is to make sure we meet face to face. And I do apologise that we can't meet face to face. So this is the best option we can do today. So Jill communicated with everyone, Jill from council, just to say you have 5 minutes to speak. So I will leave it up to you. I have a run sheet here in front of me. So I have Haimona first, Garth second, Jill, then Stefan, Phil, Amy, David, and Tim. So that is the schedule I'm going to follow. So without further ado, I hand over to Haimona Ngata. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to talk to us.
Hang on. Oh, there we go. Can we hear us? Are we all okay? Sweet. Fantastic. Kia ora, everyone. Hope you're well. I'm joined by Ricardo Christie from the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust. And yeah, thanks for having us. I guess, yeah, you all know why we're here. It's obvious in the paper and stuff like that, yeah, we're working on the pump track facility as well as the skate park. So I think we'll just kind of outline our situation and stuff. And yes, we did do a letter drop. We met with the neighbours and there were concerns raised. We've looked to try and mitigate those concerns, but yeah, here we are and stuff. But I guess we just want to talk about our visualization for Tairāwhiti moving forward in this active rec space and how important these active recreation facilities are for the whole of our community, and why that area is chosen as the location for the pump track. One being that its proximity to the skate park, its proximity to the city, its proximity to the surf. These culture sports work together, I guess, right, Rick? Like surfing's a massive part of this whole culture and stuff. And
yeah, for sure. Skateboarding and surfing has always kind of come hand in hand with kids who are trying to be the best that they can be in the surf. They cross train on a skateboard, and the pump track is going to be an amazing facility for them to get better at what they do, and just another fun, free thing that they can do with their time.
And I guess, yeah, from our trust point of view, obviously we're all aware that Gisborne's changing, its social dynamic is changing, the town is growing, it's booming, it's blossoming, and we have new people coming into region. So I think it's important to provide our community with free facilities that they can passively activate and passively get together and have fun on, basically. Yeah, I don't think there's much more to kind of say, like where our intentions are to build a pump track, build a skate park, build some other facilities that the whole community can kind of enjoy and have fun on, and hopefully inspire the younger generation to kind of maybe think outside the box as far as their sporting and recreation activities are concerned, basically.
Yeah, for sure. And just keeping them active, getting them off their phones, getting them off the TV, getting them outside again, encouraging that positive energy that you can get from doing something active. I think that's really important. Health has never been more important, and getting outside doing stuff is essential. And me having kids, I know that you've got to encourage that. Otherwise they do, sit on their phones or play games online or all that sort of stuff. So providing them something else is important.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, guys. Thank you for your submission. We appreciate that. Okay, we move on to Garth Tattersfield. Welcome, Garth. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, I do want to applaud the trustees of the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust for their initiative. The skate park that is being developed over there is absolutely magnificent. And the idea of having a pump track in Gisborne is to be commended. But we're opposed to the location. When we look at the requirements of a hub, which is being established by putting a pump track in Alfred Cox Park, the literature is saying you're establishing a hub. Now we've got a hub with a very busy street running through. It just doesn't make sense. The idea of a hub, and I've done a lot of research on this, and it's being established, well established through New Zealand and other parts of the world, is this various activities to share common facilities. Common facilities like parking, toilets, security, administration, and this proposal, the trust will gain no synergies because the distance and the separation by the grey street, whereas the Waikirikiri Park has all of this. Right now, it's got parking, it's got toilets, it's got an administration building. There's a softball diamond there, there's a children's play facilities. there's space for a pump track. It could be put there right now. The people who are living in that area tend to have younger families that would be delighted to have a facility nearby rather than having to travel into town. It should be noted also that I did a lot of research. There's over 20 pump tracks throughout New Zealand. None of them are next to residential housing. This one's being jammed right close. It'll be the first one in New Zealand to be that close to residential housing. Definition of a hub, as I say, is to have shared facilities. And I'll read from the specifications that the District Council has on their website. The specifications for a hub includes numerous things, but provision of facilities to support the use of a space of a full day, including toilets, drinking water, shade, just the shade, and those trees won't reduce the noise that come into the houses close by. But there's no drinking water. The toilets are problematical. They're using the ones for the information centre that's 130 metres away, and those are only open while the information centre is open. It also requires easily accessible for all abilities, supported by good connections to active transport network, I presume that means buses, and adequate parking. Now, parking is the nub. There's no parking. And I'm amazed that the skate park could be allowed to go ahead to be redeveloped with no off-street parking. They're all parking on Grey Street, which has had limited parking. Opposite the skate park is the information centre. Now, most, or not all, but many towns and cities around New Zealand, the information centre is off the road with its own off-street parking. Gisborne doesn't have that. They have to contend for parking with other people. Not a good look for visitors to the city. Then there's the bus. The intercity bus there takes up quite a bit of space. People coming to drop off passengers or pick them up require parking. Again, a lot of cities around New Zealand, the buses are off-road with off-road parking. Our bus doesn't have that. So now we have 3 facilities with no off-road parking, contesting for the limited car space in Grey Street. And it'll get worse. We're going to put a pump track there, and those people want to come down there, park their car, quite rightly, and the kids will get off. Some will go to the skate park, some to the pump track. So we now have 4 facilities with no off-street parking, contending for the limited spaces in Grey Street. Those spaces are also used by the staff that work at the information centre, people visiting their houses nearby, people attending the dentists on the corner. It just does not make sense, and it'll get worse. The proposal now includes a pedestrian crossing so that the kids that want to go from the skate park to the pump track can cross safely. Now, they'll only do that if the pedestrian crossing is not way down the road, but right in a convenient place. That then will take out some of those parks to establish the pedestrian crossing. So that's even less parking. Now, the skate park is an excellent facility. I've had a sneak preview. It'll be one of the best in New Zealand. The skate track is, skateboarding is an Olympic sport now. And presumably this will attract competition and people from outside of the district. They'll come, rock on up to the skate park, and hello, no off-street parking. Very strange. And the same will happen with the pump track. The promoters have said that there could be national competitions there. The people will drive up with their bikes on the back of their cars, and hello, where do I park? There's no off-street parking. It's just not a good look for the Gisborne city. It's not a good decision. Waikirikiri Park is a good place to go. Now, the submitters that put in submissions, 8 of them were in favour. One of those is a trustee of the trust. So the remaining 7, only one of them has mentioned Alfred Cox as a desirable location. The others are supporting the concept of having a pump track in Gisborne. which we all do. And it is a great activity for the young children, but just don't put it in Alfred Cox Park.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your submission, Garth. Councillors, I am going to go through our submitters. If there are any questions of clarification later, it's only if you did not understand something or want a clarification question, I will allow that. And then, because later we are going to move into debating. So for now, listening to our submitters, we are here to listen. If there's something that you want clarification on, then you can ask a question. Thank you for that, Garth. I'm going to move on to Jill. Jill, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Hear me? Can you hear me? I can't
Yes.
seem to get sound.
Jill, we hear you very clear. You can.
Oh, you can. Thank you. Okay.
Jill.
Okay. My name is Jill Smith, and we live on a back section in Kahutia Street, backing onto Alfred Cox Park. The pump track, should it go ahead, will be situated 25 metres from our bedroom. I have put in a submission outlining all the reasons why I do not want the track on the Alfred Cox Park, so will not revisit them. However, I would like to talk about who uses the park. Last week, I was isolated with Omicron, so I took my chair and sat at my gate for a couple of hours from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. during the week. Our Puni school children went on a nature walk. People with and without dogs walked along the pathway. A group of people actually played frisbee golf, and I did note that some of the goals have been dismantled already. 3 people practiced their golf chipping. Children after school used the walkway to go home. A man in a wheelchair. Kids on scooters and skateboards used it. A few couples sat under the trees to rest and enjoy, and so many birds enjoying the peace and security. I, for one, would not be able to freely walk out of my gate and enjoy the park, which is the only green belt open space in Gisborne apart from the Botanical Gardens. The noise will not be reduced by a few trees planted around, so will seriously impact on the neighbouring houses. The nearest toilet is 130 metres away and is only open from 9 to 5, so kids will not walk this distance when there are fences and trees to urinate against. The area is not visible from the road, so criminal activity, fighting and bullying will not be seen by passing traffic or the police. I'm not adverse to the idea, but certainly adverse to positioning it in our beautiful park and a residential area. Thank you.
Good, I thank you for that, Jill. Nice and concise submission. Thanks for that.
That's all right.
Okay, next we move on to Stefan Piszczew. Stefan, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, Morena Koutou, and thank you everyone for giving me a little bit of time today. I'll try and be fairly concise as well. I just want to start by acknowledging, yes, there is a dilemma here, because on the one hand, there's this great opportunity to develop an amazing community asset. And I think councillors, many of us would all agree that it's kind of being offered on a silver platter, and that the Adventure Trust has done some huge work, put a lot of time and sacrifice to get to this point. And the design is done, they've secured the funding, and builders are lined up and it's ready to go. So the thought that we could have something there by May is pretty phenomenal. And I think there's no point me waxing lyrical about the benefits it'll bring. I think everyone agrees, and I could see that universally around the wider benefits of a pump track. However, I do want to acknowledge, and I think we do need to acknowledge the concerns of residents. I do empathise with the potential risks you're saying. It's easy for me to say push it through when I don't live next door to a development. So that does need to be considered. And I think from what I'm hearing and what I've seen in the submissions, there are generally two main areas of concern around noise and potentially antisocial behaviour. Although Garth, you've obviously talked about the transport and the parking issues as well. Definitely the pump track will attract people. That's the great thing about it. It will be much loved and highly used. I think on the noise front, and I've done a little bit of research, when you look at the noise of actually people using the track with the asphalt there, it's not significant, and when compared to many other activities, it's a lot lower down the scale with regards to the noise it actually produces. So I think the fear around the noise is around people congregating around the track, and that's potentially where the antisocial behaviour will come in. But that is where I would hope that the fact that the noise comes from that is where there are more opportunities to put some controls and mitigations into place. And I appreciate there might be a little bit of scepticism around what can be done. Garth, you mentioned that generally the pump tracks, from what you've researched, aren't in residential areas. I think there's one I know of up in Grey Lynn in Auckland that seems to be pretty much surrounded by housing in a residential area, and I think that one's going really well and is much loved and enjoyed. So I think there is the opportunity to talk to others around some of the things they've done to reduce those risks that have been rightly raised. I think there's also innovative ways that we can come up with some other mitigations as well. And on behalf of Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti, we are happy to be involved in any work with the Adventure Trust Council and, most importantly, the residents, to keep exploring those further. You know, the conversation about, is this a hub, and is it fitting the pure definition of a hub? Perhaps not. I mean, we could also use the word, this is sort of becoming an activity precinct down in that area where there's the possibility for some shared facilities, but it is a precinct. Being in the central city is an ideal location where, yes, it may increase traffic volume, but also it gives an opportunity for a lot of people to bike to the pump track, and especially if younger people are using it rather than loading up cars. So that might take some of the traffic concerns out. But really, that is an area that will be accessible to all. There are a lot of benefits in putting it in that place. So from Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti's point of view, we support the preferred option, which is option 2. Grant the lease, but that the lease terms capture some mitigations, because, and I think the paper spoke really well to this, this is a point in time. This is an opportunity that's here now to be seized. And even if a few other actions are put in place, I think the paper almost alluded to the fact that there will be a domino effect, and that the funding will be rescinded. It is very difficult in this climate to get builders working. If you see some of the other projects happening around the region, inflation costs, pressures are going through the roof. So my sense is, if this doesn't go ahead, that's it. That could be it for our region. And finally, it's not much. We're a not-for-profit trust, and we struggle for funding every year, but would be happy to contribute $3,000 towards the cost of any mitigation factors that might go in, whether that's additional signage, barriers, planting, security type things that could help. So that might just be a little bit just to help with addressing some of the residents' concerns. Final comment also, sorry, just mentioning about tracks around with communities. If you think a lot of schools have bike tracks, they're often surrounded by residents as well, and they can get really good usage. And I don't think we've seen a surge in noise complaints or antisocial behaviour from that. So, as I say, there are ways, I think, to make this work, and that's what I would hope, while still respecting the views of the residents. Thank you for your time. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Stefan. Thank you for that. Next, I move to Phil Watson. Phil, the floor is yours.
Kia ora tātou. My name is Phil. I'm a physiotherapist and a member of the Gisborne Board Riders. I'm on the Board Riders Committee for High Performance and Policy Development. I want to express support for the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust development of the new pump track on Grey Street. The children of our community need recreational areas to be physically active, to challenge themselves, learning new skills, and a place for social connection. A new skate park and pump track development are fantastic recreational areas for children, teenagers, and families learning to skate or bike. Having the facility will be a great place for people to spend time together, having fun and being active. As a physiotherapist, I see rising levels of physical inactivity in children and the close link with childhood obesity. The Ministry of Health in New Zealand reports around 1 in 8 children aged 2 to 14 years were classified as obese in 2021, and this is around 12.7%. This is up from 9.5% in the previous years of 2019 and 2020. So we can see that obesity is rising, and it's impacting kids locally in our region and also nationally. Kids who are inactive in our region have a greater risk of this obesity and subsequent health impacts. Kids that are physically inactive will also find that it will start to affect other areas of their life, such as schooling performance, behaviour. They might lack confidence in their abilities. We need to provide places in the community where our kids can be physically active. And the children that use, or teenagers that use scooters, bikes and skateboards will be active for many hours in the skate park and the pump track. The Gisborne Board Riders supports the development of the skate park and the pump track, as it can provide girls and boys with opportunities to learn new athletic skills and translate to being better surfers. At the club, we use the skate park facilities with our youth initiatives such as the Gorom Lab, Rippers 2.0, High School Scholastics team trainings. And skating really helps these kids to learn balance, strengthen their leg muscles, and allows our coaches a place and facility to train and teach correct fundamental techniques for surfing, or when the ocean or the wind isn't ideal and surfing isn't great. But we also have used the skate park sort of facilities for the Salty Sirens Festival in 2020, which was a female-only event, and this included skateboarding, surfing, and yoga. And the whole concept of that is trying to increase female participation in skating and surfing. This is important to the club, but also to the community as well. So we hope to see the community embrace the new developments like the skate park and pump track. I can hear obviously the concerns of the local residents. I do respect that, but I think the facility is a really great opportunity for tamariki and also visitors to the region with their families being able to be physically active and providing a place for them to be able to have social connection for these families. So I want to thank everyone for their submissions and their time. And yeah, thank you.
Kia ora, Phil. Thank you for your submission as well. I move on to Amy Spence.
Hey, Amy, oh, can you hear me? Sorry.
Amy is doing, because I saw on Facebook, Amy is doing the big challenge down south.
That's right, and she's currently got trench foot and is in the surgery at the moment. So yeah, she won't be commenting. So
no submission from her. Thank you for that,
Good.
David Newsom. David, the floor is yours. Thank you. You are next. David, you are muted. David, David, you are not muted, but we cannot hear you. Take a look at your sound if you can. We can't hear you, David. You might have to sit.
We had the same issue with Jill earlier. Maybe he has to go out and come back in. That's what you did, didn't you, Jill?
Could he maybe call you, Your Worship? Do it that way.
Do you see anything, David? Well, David, if you can ring me on my phone, you can talk on my phone onto the Zoom webinar. As councillors, we need to sometimes be very sharp because we lose a colleague and then they ring me on my phone. So David, where did I see you now? Now I can't see you. If you can hear me, write down my phone number, 868-5382. And then you ring me. This will come to my cell phone. And then you will be able to talk to us. So you ring me and you can talk on my phone. Okay. Let's see if we can get David on the line. I'll turn up my volume as much as possible and then I'll just hold the phone and everyone can listen in. Kia ora, David, how are you? Hello, how are you?
unfortunately, and I'm obviously having a little bit of trouble.
David, no worries at all. You relax. We can clearly hear you on the phone. So I'm going to hold up my phone and you make your 5-minute submission and everyone is able to hear you. So sit back, relax. We are listening.
Good morning.
Morning.
Here is my submission against the plan to place a pump track near a residential properties in Alfred Cox Park. The pump track is a wonderful idea, but it will be in the wrong place, as it will only be 15 to 20 metres from residential properties. I would like to say that money spent on this kind of facility is money well spent. The skate park has proved that, but the skate park is not affecting residential properties. It will be very noisy, with many children, teenagers, and no doubt adults using the track with great excitement. And excitement is usually very noisy. It will bring youth into the area where they would not normally gather. And that will be a potential for problems along with noise, litter, graffiti, and benches and trees in the area, as the toilets are some distance away. Referring to conduct on premises 717273 on lease rules, with all the will in the world, you will not be able to monitor the goings on for all the hours in the day. And I'm sure that will likely lessen with time. Nearly all of the people affected by the track are of older years, and some dwellings are very close to the fence line, making it even more intrusive. Speaking for my wife and myself, we spend much time in the garden, and on lovely afternoons or early evenings, spend time on the deck with the odd wine or beer, watching the birds playing in the bird bath. It's magical. Noise from the track would greatly lessen this enjoyment. We have spent a good deal of money on our house and garden in recent years, so as we can live there for as long as possible. We have been there 41 years, in which time the piece at the front of the house has been ruined. Lutia and Anzac streets were at one time separate streets. Then they became one, and islands were placed at the Roebuck Road and Carnarvon Street entry. This deterred heavy traffic. Then the islands were removed, and you name it, we get it down Cahucha Street. So hence the spend on double glazing, and now you want to ruin the piece at the rear of the property. There is room for this track to go alongside the mini golf course at the totem pole end of lot DP 274 Narkin, where it would be away from the residential properties and nearer to the skate park facilities. I have heard say it will interfere with the flea market. That is just an excuse, as the flea market, which is now not well attended, can move a few yards further up the park. It is only there for a couple of hours on a Saturday. The track will permanently be at our back fences for longer than the life many of us have left to live. Some of you might remember there was a BMX track further up the park some years ago at Stanley Road End, but that still affected residential properties and is not a solution, as these types of recreation should be well away from residential areas. Station land is another perfect alternative. I realise it is Maori land, but it is not in regular use. Many of the users of the pump track will no doubt be Maori. Summing up, how would you feel if you had an elderly parent or parents who had a peaceful back garden that they enjoyed immensely, and the council came along and told them they were putting a pump track outside their fence? Also bearing in mind the loss in value of the property. Not many buyers would want a pump track adjacent to their property. That is all I have to say, except please don't put a pump track outside our fences. It would be highly inconsiderate for the council to allow this, as we do pay good rates in this area also.
David,
Thank you very much.
David, many thanks for your contribution. We appreciate it. Thank you for being able to pivot off Zoom onto the phone. We really appreciate that. And thank you, everyone clearly heard your submission.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillors, we have our last submitter for the day, Tim White. Once Tim has finished, I'm going to ask our reporting officer if he wants to respond or just give feedback like we usually do. What we're going to do then is go into our debating. We'll move on to that. I just first want to get through all our hearing feedback and then listen to the reporting officer. And then as usual, we will move into meeting where we will debate. So, Tim, the floor is yours. Thank you. You're muted, Tim.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
All good. Thank you, Tim.
Okay. Hello. Thanks for having me. My name's Tim White, and I'm a former pro BMX rider, bike shop owner, and now I work for New Zealand apparel company iLab, which is a big streetwear manufacturer. I'm a bicycle advocate, and I've seen the first-hand benefits with cycling and the way it works in the community. I think everybody here knows how important cycling is. But I think we need to look a bit more holistically with cycling and the future that it holds for a spot like Gisborne. Cycling is going to essentially replace the car, right? Gas prices are going through the roof. It's going to be used more as a utilitarian vehicle like the 1900s. I think we're going to see a massive resurgence in that. As electric cars are very expensive, the gas guzzlers are going to get put off the road, and people are going to use bikes for basic transport. Now, I suggest that people are going to be riding to the pump track. They're going to ride to the skate park. And I know this isn't going to happen this year, next year, in a few years, but in 10 years' time, bicycles, people will be riding around on them to get around. The buzzword of a pump track, I think, is pretty popular right now. And for all accounts, it's a bit of a playground for people on bikes, right? And what I think is one of the really important factors about this is teenagers and preteens. They get missed in the community. They get forgotten about. They are just they've got the skate park, correct? Where else do they hang out? The pump track is an amazing place for them to go, hang out, be with other kids, adults, any walk of life. During the 90s, we built a pump track in Devonport, and on any weekend, there was lots of people down there. There were adults, kids, everything. And I'll tell you right now, it was self-policing. The older kids would make sure the younger kids wouldn't fight each other. Any abuse or bad behavior was looked down upon by the older people that were using the track. The younger people, you could be riding the bike very young age and right up until old people. So we had this massive spread of ages, which is amazing for it. Location, yes, in Auckland, man, we have in 16-kilometre radius, I think there's about 5 pump tracks in my neighbourhood. They're in schools. They're right next door to houses. I don't know about any complaints about noises, and I don't disagree there is noises, but the noises that are here from that in the schools or wherever, I mean, you just don't hear about complaints about it that I know about. Obviously, it's probably happened. So I think that the short-sightedness of maybe some of the problems like noise or bad behavior or whatever overall, we need to look at a more approach that is for the wider area. A pump track essentially is a place for everyone to learn to ride. So we cover a massive age group with this. We're talking about 4-year-old kids right up to 50-year-old people that can use this facility. So it's going to be everybody down there. It's not just going to be teenagers. It's for everybody. It's for poor people, rich people, round people, square people, purple people, pink people. Everyone's welcome in a spot like this. It's not a place that discriminates against anyone. And I think that's such a cool community aspect, regardless of that location, you know. Community health. How much money do you think the taxpayers are going to save by putting a pump track over 30 years by the fact that we're keeping people out of hospital because they've learned to have a better lifestyle and they enjoy the exercise? Mental health. How many, I think if you guys had one kid that turned to bicycles as opposed to doing drugs and whatever, then that's a win. Mental health is such a huge thing. We have kids, we have teenagers killing themselves all year long. The statistics are horrendous. The bicycle is gonna, the pump track is gonna help kids divert from that. And I think if you had one kid that got diverted in that time, then it's a total win. The next thing, future stars, right? I can tell you for a fact, Gisborne has got a BMX rider going to the Olympics. Well, in France, can you imagine that? She's going to be down the pump track with kids on the weekend, you know, once in a blue moon, doing a training session. And suddenly you've got this little Olympian factory in your backyard on a, I don't even, what is it, 250,000 for the track? Think about that. You've got almost an Olympic facility down there. And what if you guys get more Olympians coming out of Gisborne? And she she knows how to talk to all the kids down there, and she would be an amazing advocate to be down there, helping kids progress and getting them on the bike. Property value, I reckon that would have to look at it. I'm no expert, but I think that a pump track probably brings property value increases. And I won't go on the record as that as a truth, but if you look around the world, when these facilities go in, bike lanes, all this kind of stuff, property values increase. People love that, right? Destination tourism. New Zealand's turning into a mountain bike capital of the world. So,
Pat, you're just sharing screen. You just need to remove that, please. Thank you. Carry on, Tim.
Yeah. Destination tourism. Let's think about that. If you're when the borders open up, people are looking to New Zealand as the mountain bike capital of the world.
Pat, you're just sharing your screen. You just need to remove that. Thank you.
So when they're looking around, hey, we're tourists, we're from Germany, we want to come down, we want to ride all the coolest mountain bike parks and stuff in New Zealand. Oh wait, let's have a look. Gisborne, they've got a cool mountain bike park. They've got this great beachside town. They've got a cool pump track. Suddenly you're bringing in extra dollars just based on these little add-ons, little feather in Gisborne's hat, that it's more of an area for that. The list of pros is just so extensive. We could be here forever. And I really think it's an important thing. Hamona and I actually started a pump track in Devonport almost 5 years ago. We're right in the middle of building it now. The houses are quite close by. And what's crazy is that the Devonport community is outspoken. And I've been surprised it's been unanimous, the decisions, that everyone's happy with the pump track. And I thought, in a nutshell, that's crazy. But what they do is they want the community to get outside, get moving, and get away from the dreaded iPad babysitter. I rest my case.
Thank you for your submission, Tim. Hey, I do want to thank everyone. Thank you for taking the time today. Thank you for doing it in situations that we all had to adapt to. It's always so much better to meet face to face, but we did it via Zoom, via phone. We were trying to make sure all voices are heard. So I do take this opportunity to thank our submitters. We are now going to move into, I just want to ask if there are any clarification questions. I thought the submissions were very straightforward, and also we had the opportunity to read the submissions. So I don't see any hands up at this stage. Councillors will have the opportunity to debate this in the next while. But before we get there, I just want to extend my thanks to everyone that took the opportunity to talk to us today. And I am now Debbie, you have a question of clarification.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know if anyone knows why the BMX track that was just a little bit up. I used to take my kids there when they were younger. Why that moved?
Oh, hi, I think maybe I can talk to this. I used to hang out there too quite a bit, Debbie, back in the day. I think it was because the track got bigger. So the track that was there wasn't up to a national standard. So in order to hold a national event, they needed the track to be bigger. So hence why the track was moved and it was redeveloped and brought up to a national standard. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the reason why it was moved.
Thank you for that. Pat, do you have a question of clarification? You are muted, Pat.
Madam Chair, I was wanting to ask what the mitigations, which are mentioned both in the report and in the submission, and it suggests that the trust might come up with mitigations. And I think we need to know now, because I'm sure that's what everyone wants to understand, what mitigations might look like. And we do have a track record that signage isn't particularly effective, because if people don't like it, they take it down. So can we hear from the trust if there are any mitigations, please? I see Shannon's made a note that it's on the bottom of page 11, but I think we need to be explicit.
Thank you for that. I will I can ask that of, hey Mona, are you, yes. Who is the person that will speak? So on page 11, under option
it's
number 5, we have talk about height restrictions, but can you just more elaborate on what is being recommended if councillors decide to go with option 2 with conditions?
I wonder actually, sorry, hi Mona, if I could jump in. I think for clarification, the mitigations would be recommended by council. If council decided to pursue that option, we would be doing that with a group of internal staff, initially proposing what we see as the most fit for purpose mitigations, and testing them back with the Adventure Trust and the residents to kind of test that we're on the right track and that's meeting a happy medium. There is thinking to be done in that space, absolutely. My initial thoughts on suitable mitigations would be a height restriction to somewhere similar to 1.5 meters, which would put restrictions on things like, and they're not currently in the designs, but making sure that we don't end up with towers or grandstands or anything that would really impede on the privacy of neighbouring properties. 1.5 meters, for reference, is the equivalent to someone effectively being 10 centimetres taller at your fence line. So across the distance of 20 metres to the track, effectively we're saying that would be the impedance on privacy. We'd also be considering something like planting on berms with a low screen that would have a positive effect on noise and privacy, like a harikiki or something similar. And we would want to make sure that the current design maintains that the start-stop area is at the furthest position possible from residential houses, because that's ultimately where things like tables, bins, where people will be. The current design has the kind of furthest reaches of the track, those closest to the houses, being areas where people would be travelling through and we wouldn't be expecting them to stop. For noise, we could place restriction on the frequency and timing of events and the subsequent noise output. There are some resource consents that we can look into for specific mitigations there. And not having a public power source, I think, would be key as well. And we'd also be saying no permanent lighting would be permitted in the development. So those are our initial thoughts on the mitigations that we would put in place and how we would agree on them. So they are draft and there's work to do.
Madam Chair, I've got a supplementary to that. And as a non-knower of detail around a pump track, one assumes that they would have jumps in them. So how high is the hump and therefore the jump? And that's what is also going to make noise, surely, if that's near the back of residence. So is there
I just want to make sure, so we will give him, Tyler, the opportunity now I just want to make sure we ask all questions of our submitters now, and then Tyler will have the opportunity to give us the response before we move into debating. So I just want to make sure all these questions and queries will be able to be asked in the debate. Larry or Tony, do you have questions of clarification from any of our submitters before we formally move into debating?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, one of the submitters mentioned about the parking facilities along there, and I was just wondering if there's any thought gone into extra parking by the Alfred Cox Park area, or even in the Railway Reserve. I mean, there's a big space there, so I know in past it's been used for gypsy fairs and parking for any events that have been down that end of Waikanae and that. So is that an option? Is that an option to appease parking?
Thank you. That can be answered in our debating time, or Tyler, you can address that. Any other hands up to ask questions of our submitters? If not, thank you so much to everyone that took the time. Councillors will now move into formal debating time. I'm just quickly opening up my chat box to see what is going on there. So there's nothing there. Shannon, do you have a question of clarification before we move to the officer's response?
No, I'm just raising my hand for debate.
Thank you. So Tyler, I will open, like we always do in a hearing, give officer just the opportunity if there are stuff that they want to address. We will also be having, obviously there will be questions from councillors as well as we go. So I'm giving you the opportunity, Tyler, if you want to just address some issues that were raised in submissions, and then councillors, we will move into debate. As always, councillors, I can already see hands up. I will allow you to speak once and then see how we go from there. But just for fairness, I want to make sure if people that want to say something have the opportunity. Tyler, the floor is yours.
Well, through your worship, there probably wasn't a huge deal that came through that was new information to the submissions received. I did note down a couple of points. There were some points around the proximity to bathrooms and the availability of those bathrooms. We did find that the proximity was similar to that of other parks, if not better, to some of our major sporting facilities in terms of distance from those public conveniences to the facility. And a point of clarification, the bathrooms at the iSite are open dawn to dusk, and so that adjusts with daylight hours and is very, very easily changed through our arrangement with recreational services. The parking points, one thing we try and do with community facilities is make sure that we're maximising any development and that things have multiple uses. I think one benefit here is that we would expect this facility to be primarily used beyond work hours. So actually in our time when there'd be greatest recreational pressure on the facility, Saturday or in the evenings, and especially summer evenings, we would expect that there wouldn't be that business pressure on the same parks. So we would expect that actually the parking is adequate in its current form, and that we won't really see this added pressure at a time when it's currently busy. The proposed pedestrian crossing also won't eliminate any of those parks in its current design. And the final point for me, I think there was a question around hubs and the scale of facilities that's required to house a hub. I think important to note is that a hub is really made up by people, and the facilities surround them as necessary, and they vary in size depending on that. So a hub can range anything from things that we see down in Christchurch that range over 20 hectares and accommodate thousands and thousands of people on a weekend to something that might only accommodate 100 on the weekend. The idea is that it has multiple ownership and governance models, that it accommodates for lots of sports and activities at once, and that it maximizes use of common facilities. That's it from me for the minute. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to open up debate for councillors. So at this stage, I have Downsing, Wharehinga, Worsnop, Seymour, Cranster, Foster, Robinson, Sheldrake. Go.
Thank you. I would be happy to move an alternative to option 2. I hear that there is some sense in option 2. Firstly, I'd want to remove option 2C. Permanent lighting is absolutely required in that site. You can't build a facility for only summer use. It'd be impractical for use throughout the majority of winter after work hours. So we cannot restrict a sports installation to such narrow hours. The other part is that the height restrictions. I hear that the reluctance against towers, grandstand seating, that kind of thing. But if it was to be included a height restriction, then it would be a height restriction on permanent development, and it would allow for the full height of an international level pump track course. So it would only impact building of towers or building of grandstand seating, and limit those to event use. So I wouldn't want to see it completely out. If they have an event that requires a tower, I'd like them to be able to construct one on a temporary basis. And then restrictions on timing and frequency of events. I'm happy with it to have a shutdown of lights at a certain hour. A reasonable late period for use. But yeah, I don't. It definitely needs lights. It may need structures during events, and some sensible restrictions. Fine. I would have moved option 1, but I think option 2 does have some compromises, particularly in that permanent structure and towers.
Good, thank you for your contribution. Councillor Wharehinga.
I second what Councillor Dowsing is proposing. Just for clarity, Councillor Dowsing, in regards to the recommendations that are on page 5, you're moving all 3 of those. Your concerns are part of 3A, correct? So around the direction to the chief executive, around special conditions, etc., etc. Do I have that correct?
Yes. So just option 2A, height restrictions for permanent installation of towers and grandstand seating. Option B, restrictions to timing to limit unsocial hour use, something in the 10 o'clock onward, turn the lights off, or turn the lights off that stop practical use, but leave lights on if it adds to security, leave minimal light. And then removal of option C, because it definitely needs permanent lighting installed.
What page are you on?
That's at the bottom of page 11.
Madam Chair. Isn't the recommendation page 5?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, Councillor, this is exactly why I'm asking what page you are on. Because when I am going to pass a recommendation, I will only be looking at page 5.
Yes, yeah, and that's why I was...
Councillor Dowsing and Wharehinga is actually just advising staff when they will look at conditions for consent. That is what you are saying. You are giving your advice on what they will take into account when they set conditions with the group and with neighbours and with council staff. Is that correct? I'm just clarifying that.
Well, that's what I was seeking to clarify with the mover, so that I was assured as to what I was seeking.
I'll be clear then, I'm moving option 3 with the removal of clauses around light installations.
I second that.
Madam Chair, could we perhaps have a conversation before we all get into this? Because some of this is definitely getting into resource consent area, and in the one part of the paper it's suggesting if it's agreed it could go ahead next month, and yet we've got a whole lot of issues that definitely, I believe, will require resource consent. So can we have clarity from a council officer around exactly what the process might be from here, because to suddenly put up lighting and to potentially allow, even if it's only randomly.
Yeah, point of order, Madam Chair. I have the floor at the moment. I've finished.
So, Councillor Seymour, I just want to clarify, I'm just coming back again because just to you, Councillor Dowsing, just humour me. You told me you moved option what? And on what page were you referring to? Did you say option 2 on page 12 and you made some recommendations in regards to conditions that might sit around a resource consent? Am I understanding you correct?
I'm making recommendations that that go against the statements around what may be included in option 2. My recommendation is to exclude any suggestion that they wouldn't be able to install lighting.
So what you are doing, so just listen to what I'm just trying to clarify it for myself. You are moving option 2 and you are telling staff that you want them to consider and take into account the height restrictions for temporary installation, that if there might be a competition, and for them to consider the lighting option in order to allow some winter use after school hours. Am I correct?
Look, I think it's fairly clear. The decision to grant the lease, it then says 3A, direct the chief executive as to the nature of any special conditions. I'm making the direction as to the special conditions, which is that which were spoken about on page 11. So
Yep. Now it makes more sense to me. Thank you. I was looking at number 2. Okay. So Councillor Wharehinga, you have the floor, and then we have still a lot of discussions to go forward, Councillor Seymour. I agree with you. There will be discussions going forward. So Councillor Wharehinga, you have seconded what Councillor Dowsing has said. Anything else you want to add to your discussion?
Yeah, I trust our staff and those stakeholders, our staff, to be able to have the conversation with our stakeholders and land these mitigations, etc. For this project. That has been spoken extensively by the submitters around mitigation. I feel that we will be able to land something that works for the entirety of our community. We often hear this. We hear this actually every time we go to put in any kind of infrastructure as a council. We heard it when we put in the free barbecues down at the beach. That they were going to get demolished and people were going to take them, and things like that. That we're able to provide mitigation in regards to that. We've heard. We often hear these really valid concerns from our community, and what I'm hearing from our staff, and then also from the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust and the people that live around the area, is that we're willing to do the work in order to be able to provide proper mitigation for everyone around. It's worked before. It's what we've done. I trust our staff to do the things that we need to do. I'm more than happy to second this, what Councillor Dowsing has put forward.
Thank you for that. Councillor Worsnop, then Councillor Seymour. Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm hugely supportive of the track. Absolutely love the idea. Totally agree that we need one. I do have some concerns that the opportunity as it stands might be potentially leading us to make decisions that are possibly not as enduring as they could be in the long term. I think we have a responsibility to build enduring solutions which are fit for purpose over the long term. I'd like to understand better the opportunity cost of the immediate lost funding relative to what I believe probably will be demands for more funds in the future to accommodate parking, to accommodate probably more suitable and closer toilets. I do think the security concern is a valid one, given that it's not easily observable from the road. If any of you have children in the teenage years, you might be familiar with the fact that the most recent lovely episode on a lovely site called Fight Gisborne was a altercation at the BMX track. So, you know, where you get teenagers, you do get, you know, that's just part and parcel of being a teenager. They go through and, you know, look for ways to entertain themselves, and sometimes it's not in the best ways. It is helpful if there is good supervision of those sites, or at least possible. So, I mean, I think those are all valid concerns. I'm disappointed that it seems though we're now a little bit cornered with the option of losing funding potentially being weighed up against were there better sites. I do think that we probably run the risk of underestimating the popularity. My son lives at the pump track down in Napier, and I just want to share my screen for a second, because I've got a Google snip of what the pump track down there looks like. If I can bring it up. Can you see that? Can you see what I'm sharing?
No.
Why not? Okay, hang on a minute. Give me 2 seconds.
Get Pat to do it. She's really good at sharing her screen.
Yes. For some reason, it is sharing 1 and I want it to share 2. Hang on a minute.
Okay,
No.
I'm going to move on to other councillors, and then
Can
when
you
you find
unshare
it,
me for a second? So, hang on a minute. I'm just jumping back to that. Okay, hang on. No, got it. There. Can you see that? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can see that.
We can see it, Terry.
Okay. All right. Well, the gist of it is how much parking you do need. And because they are so popular, I completely support the idea of having national events and all that kind of thing. I just wonder if we want it to be this, in accommodating the kind of things like that extent of parking, does that mean, in fact, that the funding that we've secured up front is a mere fraction of the funding that we probably need to have it live up to this? I'm not sure where I sit on this, because I feel like those are very significant things to weigh up. The opportunity of what we have right in front of us versus what will probably need to be ways to make it a more enduring opportunity, and would a better site far better enable that. Yeah, that's my complex. Sorry about the.
no, that's all good.
Can you unshare me, because my screen is all over the place and I can't see where to. Oh no, there we go. Cool.
Just moving on. Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Seymour. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question earlier was actually around process, and I was keen to know from council officers, is this going to require a resource consent? Because I think if it does, that prejudges quite a bit of the comment we'd make, but I'll leave that for them to be answered at the end. No one has suggested this morning that they don't want a pump track. I mean, obviously it's going to be great for Gisborne, but I think the issues are, regrettably, the speed with which the trust has had to move to secure the funding, and whether or not the investigations were really had the time to be put into them to ensure that it was the best possible site. Now, I know you yourself, Your Worship, are keen to see it there because kids can go from one piece of activity to the other. One question to the trust, though, I would like to know how many people can use the pump track at any one time, because I found it fascinating when I went to a meeting at Uawa where some of the trust came to talk to them, and there's only room for 4 kids tamariki on skateboards on the big piece of skateboarding equipment we're putting in. And I've just heard someone say that, you know, there could be hundreds, potentially in a different scenario, up to 1,000 people using the pump track. That is going to substantially change the environment for those owners along the, and this, as Councillor Penswick has just shown us. So, A, are we going to have a resource consent, which B, takes time? B, I have that same question that Foster asked what consideration is being done about parking. C, a council officer suggested that the safe crossings wouldn't take away any parks that are there at the moment. Fine, I'd really like to clarify that. And I had one other question I have written around here. Yeah, very keen to know how many people you would expect to be able to use it at any one time and who controls that. And the proposed preferred location is too far away for it to be controlled by the contracted people that have a role in supervising the skate park as it exists at the moment. So, I mean, nobody wants to not have the pump track. There's no question of that. What we do want is an enduring solution, as has been suggested by Councillor Worsnop, where everything is considered before we press go, so that there aren't additional funds that need to be sourced later to put in the things that we hurriedly didn't think about. And I'm just be concerned that that's the situation we would seem to find ourselves in today. So are there answers to some of those questions, Madam Chair?
Yes, I will ask our CEO, Nadine Thatcher-Swan, to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just this morning, some information was circulated to councillors that respond to the question around the requirement for resource consent. And so that, in this case, the resource consent, given it's an amenity reserve, the activity itself is permitted. It's actually just the track itself that my understanding was in that email that required the consent. The issue around the lease and the recommendations, we can pick up on any of the nuances that aren't picked up by the resource consent if the council so chose to adopt the recommendations that are there. Can I just point you to the community facilities strategy that was done in 2018, and that is your strategic kind of roadmap for what is being proposed here. And in that strategy that the council adopted, that was identified as the preferred location for the Gisborne Skate Park and the pump track. So in terms of other reserve assessments, that's been carried out with thorough engagement with the community and with sporting hubs to come up with the plan that you now have in front of you in terms of where the pump track is being located. So from a strategic perspective, that work has been done and the council adopted it.
Pat, you're just muted. Just unmute yourself.
Sorry, supplementary, Madam Chair. If there are to be structures, even on a casual basis, structures such as towers, lighting and seating, is that going to require resource consent or can that just pop up?
In terms of seating, so structures like seating, that's permitted within a reserve space. In terms of lighting, I'll just get Tyler to comment on that one.
And a tower, please.
Through the chair, that probably falls out of that conversation this morning, but effectively on the recreation reserve, lighting would be a permitted activity. A structure like a tower, I believe, would be a permitted activity, although I'm always nervous to make those recommendations, not being a consent planner, but those things do fit generally within the intent of a recreation reserve and what we expect to be permitted activities.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, those were my initial questions, but can we have some further conversation around parking, please, since it's been raised by several people? And noting Councillor Worsnop's sharing screen with us. From GDC's perspective.
Diane, can you?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to respond to that. Further to Nadine's advice around the community facilities strategy, you'll be aware that the hubbing or clustering of activities was promoted and is a key principle of that. When it comes to car parking, it's also considered good practice to maximise the parking that is available. And when I look at the pump track, that was information that was provided by the councillor today, you recognise that the numbers there are consistent with what we are fortunate to have along Grey Street. So while we're not looking at providing off-street parking, there is considerable parking along the width of Grey Street, and it is a wide road that enables accessed reasonably easily. So I would be an advocate for making the most of the infrastructure that we currently have in place. And you'll appreciate that extends all the way through down to the main beach there. And it's the same with the public toilets. We will be going through a rationalisation process to identify what's fit for purpose, where our community facilities are located, but also as they connect to the town beach and the CBD. So there's some wider work to be done there. And that would likely be considered through a future LTP. But for now, what's in front of us, there are good facilities available to support Site A or Site B. Nadine is correct in that we did some preliminary investigation about future sites through the community facility strategy. And again, the recommendations that are in front of you today support that hubbing or clustering of activity with like sports to maximise benefits and efficiencies.
Thank you for that. Okay, next we've got Councillor Cranston, then Councillor Foster. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. There's absolutely no argument that everyone's looking at this as being a fantastic community asset, and I'm very encouraged by the Adventure Trust for the work they've done and very thankful for that. This is a location question, and it's something that I'm a bit concerned about. I was very involved with the kids' cycle park, and this is a directly comparable project, absolutely the same. But the process has been a lot different, and that difference has led to complications and a bit of tail chasing going on. And that main difference was our involvement in the process. With the cycle park, I was on a committee there, and when issues sort of came up with discussions we were having around that table, they did end up back in front of councillors. Whereas at this stage, we seem to have been getting things kind of, in a tail chasing sort of way. With the issues that we had with the cycle park, things kept coming in front of us like fencing and furniture and seating and signage and lighting and toilets and health and safety and rubbish bins. And the biggie for us was parking. There was no parking on that side of the esplanade there. So we had to guarantee that as part of that project, there was a certain number of parks going to be available, and only just got past that number by the skin of our teeth. And that is a lot more open than what's available on Grey Street. So I actually share Garth's concerns about the parking issue, because it's difficult to get parking down there at present. And with the addition of this facility, it's also going to be even more difficult. So my argument is very much along the lines of the do it once and do it right. And I haven't got the confidence that this is the best location. There's mention in the report of a world-class design with a custom bespoke design. And I don't think this can be world-class with the limitations it's got on at the moment. So to actually call this world-class, we might have an opportunity to make a world-class facility, but I really doubt whether it would be at that location because of the limitations put around it. And probably the main one is that parking limitation and just the fact that there are going to be other concerns about there. So doing it once, doing it right is about getting in and following the process. It was a frustrating process with the cycle park because it probably took 2 years. We're talking about 4 or 5 months here before, after it came in front of council, that we're making these decisions. And so I don't feel as a councillor that I've had an opportunity to fully consider this project and the benefits to the community and the limitations to the community. I think the Adventure Trust has probably been down that road, and good on them for that. And I'm sure they've done the work. But I think as council, being on a council facility, we also need to have the information to have the confidence that this is a do it once, do it right thing, because it would be a real shame that we had an opportunity to have this facility, to have the community get in behind it, but there's flaws in it. And the flaws kind of stick out for me at the moment. You know, so I don't know how we get around that, but it's just, yeah, I don't want to go right back to the start, but I'd like to have the confidence that the location aspect of this facility was fully considered, because when we went to the cycle park, the arguments at the start of the process, 2 years before we put a shovel in the ground, was, is this the best location? Is this the best location? And that point was driven home, and it had to be proven that that was the best location. And I just don't know whether that due diligence has been done on this project. So it's a real shame, because I do want to be supportive of it, but I am supportive of a world-class facility with a custom bespoke design. When I look at the two plans, we've got two completely different shapes. So I'm not sure how the design can be sort of seen as being world-class and a great design when you've got two completely different shaped footprints. So how far down the process is a design when you're dealing with two completely different shaped footprints to have, you know, one is quite a squarish one and one's a very long rectangle. They would offer different designs for the end result. So I do have concerns. I really want to be able to get in behind the project and see how it's going to benefit. But yeah, I've still got questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Dion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may respond. I understand, Councillor Cranston, around the process that you experienced for the junior bike park, and that was a few years back. Again, just remind, I guess, Council of the process around the community facility strategy, and that we are now in a position where we are recognising and promoting our community to lead in places where they have strength. They have gone through, obviously, and we're all supportive of that, on quite a process for the sports park. And the pump track was always part of that conversation with funders and with council. Again, we've done a desktop exercise where we've looked at potential other sites for a bike park, and we're comfortable with the location that the Adventure Trust put forward. In response to parking, I think we've given some consideration to that with the on-street parking that is available. And in relation to your query about design, you are completely correct in that Site B would be a compromise, but it's something that the Adventure Trust, or at least council officers have been willing to give some thought to assist council to make a decision today. But you're right that Site A provides the length and width and scale that the Adventure Trust are looking for to provide their optimum experience.
Thank you for that. Councillor Foster, Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, thank you. I'm supportive of Councillor Dowsing's recommendation. I'd just like to add at the end of A, where it says on 3A, where it says and, I would like to have and work with the residents to help mitigate their concerns, and that would appease some of the residents' concerns, I'm sure. I went to the site yesterday. I've looked at it, and I think, well, you know, there's trees there at the moment which are blocking a lot of the neighbours. But if you had a hedge or some other plantings along there, it would totally block a lot of any view that was of concern to the residents, and it would also help block a bit of noise if there's any noise. So yeah, I mean, I'm so supportive of this. This is a great thing for our community, for our youth, and I just think we've got this opportunity, and it would be so sad to let it slip by. And I am hearing the concerns of the residents, and it's a fair call. But I think if we put that as part of the recommendation, then it would be adhered to, and they would be able to have the opportunity to consult through this process, and even afterwards finished to air any of their concerns that they still might have afterwards. It's a common thing that people look at all the worst scenarios that could possibly happen, and when it's all finished, it's actually not a problem at all. So you know, let's keep this dialogue open and work with the residents and really get behind this whole project with the Adventure Trust. It's fantastic. I just I really love to see this kind of activity happening, and it's a hub that will work so well for our youth in this region. So totally supportive. But I'd like to see that included, if that's appropriate with all the other councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Sheldrake. Thank you.
Thank you. And first up, thank you to our submitters this morning for making yourselves available to us. Number of things I want to talk about. Due process. I have a real concern about how quickly this has come about. There is no reference in the community facility strategy to the word pump. The word BMX appears in there 6 times, but the word pump, which I'm assuming would be part of pump track, doesn't appear in the document, not in the sporting facilities and not in the general strategy. So this has come out of left field. Now, some people may have been having conversations around this, but actually on the council table, and it's acknowledged at paragraph, I think 19 of the current report, this really is the first time council is dealing with this. I totally support a pump track, right? Absolutely, for all of the fantastic reasons that people have espoused this morning. But I cannot help but feel jamming it in site A is the wrong place. And we need to do this once and do it well. The key question for me is, would Trust Tairāwhiti withdraw their funding? And first up, can someone from TAT confirm that it is solely Trust Tairāwhiti that has funded this project, is funding this project? Or where's the funding breakdown? Just in a nutshell, please.
Lotteries have committed 250,000.
Is it just lotteries?
No, and Trust Tairāwhiti have underwritten the total amount with the inclusion, or with the proviso that we get external funding, and we have. So
right.
Yeah.
So is the Lotteries Commission funding contingent on a time frame?
It is, yes. We get allotted the funding next month, and we have, I don't have the exact details, but we have a window to draw down to be used in allocation for the project.
And sorry, when is that time frame? When is that window?
So our drawdown is on the 5th, January, February, March, April, May. May is when we're able to access that funding, and I'm not sure of the exact time frame that that window closes that it has to be used. But yeah, there is a time frame on that funding to be used.
Okay, so that doesn't sound like it's too terminal. And you've said that Trust Tairāwhiti has underwritten that.
Councillor Robinson, can I please just ask that you do not interrogate our hearing panel at this stage? We had the opportunity earlier. Please direct your questions to staff, and the question that you ask about drawdown is in the paper. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, it wasn't evident to me. And it's certainly relevant to the number of points raised by the councillors around getting this right once and doing it properly. So I don't support Site A, and I've looked at Site B, and I've gone and measured Site B, and I asked a question of staff around what sits to the south, and that's been answered by Tyler this morning. Now, the Madam CEO made a reference to the amenity reserve. Can Tyler clarify, please, would it be possible to push, if it was on Site B, which is further away from the residents, but nearer the skate park, and I think has better synergy with the skate park, if it was to go in that area, could we push part of the part of the pump track into that block of land, a title of land, just to the south of the big tree on Site B? You've answered in your email, but I don't think everyone's read the email. I know Pat hasn't read the email.
Through the chair, I think there's 2 elements here. Probably the easy part really is with Site B, to extend into the amenity reserve, you'd need to remove at least one pretty significant tree, if not a couple. You'd also need, I'd expect, a land use consent, because it doesn't have the same designations that we would expect with a recreation reserve, and doesn't lend itself in the same way to having a sports facility built upon it. From a reserve standpoint, I think we're seeing more and more the importance of good setbacks from our rivers, streams, and ocean. There's some other projects around the region that are quite prudent at this time, and I think we'd have to have a good hard look at how close we were comfortable with developing a significant facility like this to the banks of the Waikanae. The other point around the funding, now my understanding with Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust is actually that funding from lotteries needed to be drawn down by June or thereabouts. So as we worked it out, all options beyond 1 and 2, so a move to site B or another site, would we would expect that funding would then have to be returned to lotteries. That return would would make it impossible to access that trust tied awhiti funding as well, which requires other external funding sources. So therefore funding would have to be sought again to progress the project.
So looking at tied awhiti maps.
Do not speak up, Pat, because other people are speaking and then we interrupt the microphone. So just wait a second, I'll get back to you.
So I did a site visit last night with my trusty 50-metre tape measure. There is one single tree, it's not a native tree, that sits on the south boundary of site B. If that tree were removed, there's becomes 36 metres of width available for positioning the plan, which would easily accommodate the plan before you hit the next lot of trees. And that 36-metre mark from the fence of the golf course lines up with the bollards to the north of the entrance. In other words, when you drive in the driveway on Grey Street, there's some little wooden bollards there. That's 36 metres from that northern boundary. There's plenty of space in there to drop. And I think it's disingenuous to say that the river would be an issue if you're going to put the skate park, the pump track there as opposed to site A, because the entrance way to that area is actually to the south and nearer the Waikanai Creek at that point. But I cannot get away from the fact that I feel we're trying to squeeze a national or international level facility into the wrong place. It just has this inherent feeling that parking and entertainment events are just going to be jammed into the wrong space. And I look at the cycle facility that Andy was referring to, and wonder, why is it not able to be put at the north end of that? You know, why is it not able to be put where the adventure playground ends off, just to the north of that bicycle facility, or over near the BMX track, or Waikirikiri Park? Again, there are so many other places. Anyway, that's my point.
Okay, I've got hands up from staff, our CEO, and then Mrs. Sutherland. Thank you.
Yes, through your worship. So I just pointed out just in the chat that in terms of, so there's reference to the funding and the funders, but it's not just about the funding, and just recognising as a community kind of trust that it is about the cost of build as well. And as we're well aware in terms of our own capital projects, that any delay is a significant price escalation. Notwithstanding that, if there were issues about the site, then the paper in November and October last year should have stopped it then. The council at operations agreed that this was a good space for the pump track, or the connectivity between the BMX track and the pump track to go there, along with a pedestrian crossing that would help connect the two spaces. And yes, it is a lease process, and you need to go into this without any predetermination. But I think that if there was a very strong sense of this being the wrong place, then that could have been stopped at that point. That the operations committee kind of supported an approach to the Alfred Cox Park, suggested that at that time council had considered the information and felt that that was an adequate place for it to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sutherland. Thank you. Oh, your hand's not up anymore. Do you want to make a comment? Oh, you're muted, Diane. You're muted. Muted.
Apologies, through you, Madam Chair. Also to reiterate that the business case for the sports facilities came to council the 10th of December 2020 meeting, where the pump track was also included at that point as part of those hubbings and early wins. And also just wanted to support the information that Tyler provided around the amenity reserve zone and the recreation reserve zone. So while he's correct in that we wouldn't want to locate permanent infrastructure too close to the river or riparian margin, it's also about those zonings and what is considered appropriate in a recreation reserve and what is considered appropriate in an amenity reserve. So So hopefully that's a bit clearer.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Sheldrake, then Akuhata Brown, and then Worsnop. You are muted, Terry.
Okay.
All good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the submitters today. I'm a retired event promoter, so I come at it from a bit of a different, maybe a bit of an angle, but clearly, you know, this discussion for me is more probably around events bring noise. And, you know, a pump track, I tend to think of music pumping at times when there's a big event on, and it's what's acceptable to people and what isn't. And clearly, with such a decision, not everyone's going to be happy with the ultimate outcome, but how can we try and get close to this? So, you know, if there's a congregation of numbers of people, clearly there's just going to be a bit more noise. But I'd be very interested in what are the hours. I've heard Shannon mention maybe going to 10 o'clock at night. You know, what would be the normal hours of this facility being open? How many major sort of events a year? Because these things are big and they'll probably be multiple days, maybe out to 4 or 5 days if it's an international or a national competition. So that's a big question. I did have the one around the resource consent that's been answered, but the parking is the one I roll back to too. In principle, looking at the plans, and I've been down there, in fact, I went down there yesterday myself again. I would support more the B concept, but this is where I sit. Yeah, I'll just sit on. Oh, one other thing, in my event life, I've gone back to lotteries when we've had money allocated to us for a very, very significant world event into Gisborne, and money was held over because the competition got held over. So it's not like, maybe if you have the conversation, there's potential that it won't be use it or lose it based on the scenario. So I have been in that space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Akuhata Brown.
Kia ora. Thank you so much to all the submitters and especially Tat. I think the A stands for action, because you guys want to get to. You've got things to you know, focus on and get to. So I really admire that, because as you're probably aware, council processes that they take time and deliberation. Listen, I really want to thank the residents too for their involvement in this space, and having worked in this community all my life. How do we build community? How do we create spaces that intergenerationally collect us together? Because the frustration when I hear these things often is that young people bring noise, which, you know, they do, but I'm pretty noisy. So I'm trying to understand, how do we create a space that we know we want to grow more, you know, Olympic champions. And when I see our current Olympic champions with their grandparents who are so proud of what they've achieved, I see that intergenerational connection. And so I appreciate Mr. Tattersfield, Ms. Jill, and David, your concerns around that. And I just want to say that we tend to do projects in isolation, often around generational kind of age group type things. And I've worked and been involved with the skate park and acknowledged the noise and all of that happens in that space. So I feel that your actual research and all the activity that you've brought speaking to today is really valid around parking, particularly because that creates frustration for everyone in that space. I've watched people trying to drive in and out to get parks when the buses are coming in. So I do want to say to staff, you know, obviously you've heard it, paramount is this issue of parking. And of course, I have felt that you've found a space that you really want to support. A stands for action, as well as that part of the landscape. And I was looking at this thing B as a better option based on its proximity to the park across the road, the pool, the toilets, and the facility space, less engagement or intense kind of pressure on residential space. So I was kind of seeing the hub space, seeing the synergy, all of the things that have been spoken of, and saw B as that, and that tree, as Tony mentioned, removing it, giving space that way. So for me, wholly appreciate this whole dialogue, and today the impetus to getting more and more outside activity for all generations. So maybe the pump track should have a generation age person's track, so that we can invite all people from all generations. Obviously those with hip transplants and stuff, it'll be difficult, but it's certainly about how do we create a community facility that actually looks at how do we bring people together, not cause separation. So to me at the moment, sitting here and listening to all the views, like knowing we can't appease everyone, getting on and building this and getting it done is definitely what the TAT group are wanting to do. How we do it well, again, is this dialogue. And so I want to be proud of what we build. I want to be in a decision space saying we thought that through, we figured it out, and we got to the outcome that was best. And so I'm wanting to correlate more to the lease arrangement that Councillor Dowsing has mentioned as to the process moving forward. But I do want to say to the residents, I really do appreciate you being here and sharing your concerns, because they've been very well submitted. To the TAT group, of course, we don't want you to have to give funding back. That sucks. So I think we have to get to some resolution that gives the best for this region. It's about everybody that can use the space, and so I'll promote it. So for me today, the B space was just based on what I saw it as a connection to the park, crossing a road that's very busy. But again, I'm still open to listening to other constructs that could happen other parts of region. But for now, I really just want to say thank you to everyone that's in this mix. For me as a councillor, this is there's still more to come, I feel. So thank you so much, and kia ora.
Bill.
Well, I've also listened to a lot of talk this morning, some of it as we goes.
Hey, Bill, you need to sit closer to the microphone. Bill, closer to the microphone.
Yes, Tom. Oh, sorry.
Don't look at the screen, look at the microphone.
I just want to compliment staff on the amount of work they put in to this, acknowledge Sport Thai Rafferty, the trust, and the amount of support they've had from Trust Thai Rafferty and lotteries. This is a goer, this thing. It's progress. Let's not procrastinate amongst ourselves and give approval and get it done. Take into consideration the people's concerns. They're quite genuine when you listen to them. And as we've debated this issue, I've watched the body language, and some of them are a bit unhappy with what's being suggested. But all in all, let's just get on and get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, Isaac.
There you go. Now I met it. Yeah, just to see his point about, we did decide back in October as Operations Committee that this was the best option, and I appreciate the feedback that the residents have provided, and that's unfortunately with everything we do, there's some residents adversely affected. Again, though, having give that steer back in October, and now TAT having gone and way got the funding, I'd be it'd be remiss of me to change my decision now. I think to Councillor Dowsing's point, I think all the work we can do with the residents to help mitigate those concerns, we should, and that's what we're directing the CE to do, and that's what staff will take into consideration.
Okay, so anyone that have not spoken and want to speak, you have spoken, Councillor Dowsing.
No, I only moved the motion. I never got to speak.
Do you want to speak now, or do you want to hold a right of reply?
Well, it's going to be the same thing. Nothing else is speaking after me anyway, I assume.
So do you want to have a go now? Just
Yep.
Yep.
Well, I'll let Kerry go quickly if she wants a second.
Yep, I'll only be 2 seconds.
I just want to make sure everyone that haven't spoken yet, because I haven't spoken yet. I just want to
you
make
go then.
sure, no, I just want to make sure everyone that haven't spoken had their turn. So, Kerry, ask your question.
My question is for staff. Can you please provide some clarification? If option 1 is not, or option 2, is it? The one where we use this site is not adopted, does that mean that we face any chance of not having a pump track?
Yes, so I can comment on that, Kerry, and I'll incorporate it in my kōrero as well. I'm quite surprised and disappointed by the discussion that has happened today, because as a council, I know for a fact I'm just as involved as you are in this process, and this is not our first walk in the park. Don't excuse the pun. We have discussed this at a strategic level when we spoke about our facilities. Then staff came to us and said, there's this group who is fundraising, and they presented to us, and we met with them and listened to them. And I don't know the exact timeframes when it was, but it was in the last year or so. And then when we then said, yes, we will notify the lease agreement, but we ask that you work with neighbours like we do with any lease we do or any decision we make. You talk to Tangata Whenua, which TAT did. They did meet with neighbours and discuss options. I'm not saying anything was resolved. What I'm saying from this report is that there were mail letter drop boxes, there were some meetings there, and I acknowledge some people might have fallen through the crack. I'm not, you know how submissions or community consultation work. But so we then given the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust a steer by saying, yes, we will notify this lease for you. In the back, so for just taking one step to the side, as a council, I firmly believe, and Councillor Worsnop touched on that in her comments in the box, the chat box, that we should be cheering on community members who fundraise and do work on our behalf. And they have done a massive job at the skate park, what is happening there, because the skate park is our asset, but they have fundraised and are doing a lot of work there. Now they have come to us in the meantime, talk about the pump track, which was mentioned in the past. And like Diane said, they have looked at other venues as well. So what I am asking of staff is, how do we support the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust to work with neighbours? Because if this option is not given, if they're not given the lease, the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust has said to me that they feel, why carry on, why try and do more? They have already worked for a couple of years to try and build assets in town that is for the use of everyone. And I acknowledge that there are issues with neighbourhood properties. I'm not trying to poo-poo that at all. I do acknowledge that. But we have given them the steer and they have accordingly fundraised. Now they're in a position where they have the funding lined up, which expires, a section of that might expire the 1st of June. And they have the velo constructors who does those pump tracks around the country, who have also, just like builders and architects, slot in their work. So what I'm saying here, and I'm listening to all councillors because we've heard a wide range, is this is not the first time we have discussed this. This is not the first time we have given direction to our staff, and by doing that has given the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust a steer in what direction they are going. So that's the only thoughts I have here today is that we have walked down this path a few times. We have had the opportunity to question parking, to question where it goes. So I just want to say thank you to staff for a very thorough paper. I thank our submitters as well here today. It is always tough when we start talking about any lease agreement. And yes, so I'm going to open up for anyone else that want to have another go. And then also any staff response to that. And then we take it from there like we do with all of our discussions. We debate it out and then make decisions at the end of the day. It is our job to make decisions. Councillor Dowsing, I am giving you the right of reply. Everyone has now had an opportunity to speak. I don't see any other hands. I will ask the CEO just to respond before I then hand over to Councillor Dowsing for a right of reply.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in response to your question about the working with the surrounding neighbours, that's covered off in terms of the special conditions. So the discussion with which was had here and the concerns that have been raised, we have put in the recommendation that that we will cover off on any special conditions, and we've got a steer to provide that in the lease, and we will work with the trust to deliver on that.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dowsing, right of reply.
Thank you. Yeah, it's unusual not speaking at the start and the end, so I'll go through what I had here. It does touch on everything that people have said, though. And first of all, it's clear that, and the report is clear on this. If we refuse a lease, we kill the project. So that's the decision councillors are making if they refuse the lease. Staff are clear on this, that there's a loss of funding in the report if we don't provide the lease. Our responsibility here is to get the facility built and to allow those with the knowledge and the ability to do so. We're second-guessing professionals. And I agree that it wasn't in the original facility strategy, but it may surprise everyone to know that we don't always come up with the best ideas and we don't have all of the ideas ourselves. Originally, the proposals in the hub included all Waka Ama going together until we realised that they couldn't all fit on the river. It had a pool that had to move. It had an indoor hub on Childers Road that had to move. It had an outdoor hub on the golf course that had to move. We didn't get everything right, and we shouldn't have to. And it's a living document, and this awesome opportunity came into it. Council is about debating on their understanding of what makes a world-class facility. And we have world-class athletes talking to this in their submissions and saying that that's what they're building. I don't think anyone should be second-guessing that because they're the ones with the genuine knowledge. It's an approved activity, and staff have been clear that the parking requirements are met. When we talk about event parking, there's two adjacent big spaces that are often used for event parking. There's a railway reserve, and there's also the old middle yard behind the car yard there that's available for event parking if required. So there's no shortage in proximity parking if you were to have something significant. And let's not forget, and it was highlighted by one of our speakers, that this is a facility for active transport users. They cycle to the park, they skate to the park. And it's really frustrating to think that that's not going to increase. Unfortunately, there's always an element of not in my backyard. And we've heard some of that. This is referred to as a back garden, but also that current users are, walking and bird watching and school groups going on tour. Well, that's still available. That doesn't change just because we use a small portion of the park for a pump track. It's a large area, and there's large areas to either side. And something I just wanted to touch on, which I found personally frustrating to hear was that there is still a suggestion that the type of people who use this space are undesirable. There was a comment that that youth will use this area where they normally would not, and that is a bad thing, and that increased use of our reserve is a bad thing. Any additional use by our reserve by young people is a great outcome. And then the outdated stereotype, and this is touched on in submissions as well, of skateboarders and surfers and BMX riders all being undesirable. And look at the team of individuals who are doing this on our community's behalf. They're exactly those athletes, and they've got the backbone and the drive to get big projects done. They're currently the high flyers in our region who are doing multi-million-dollar sporting facilities on their own time, off their own back. And we're debating whether we know better. And I just don't agree that we do. I think that they've come to us with an exciting and amazing project. It's just down to us to provide the lease, and then they're going to build us something wonderful. So I hope that it gets your support. I'd hate to see this project die.
Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, so what I'm going to do is, like I said, like we did in our earlier meeting, please put your hands up and I will write it down. It's very difficult for me to see voting if I don't see your hands. So I have got a mover in Councillor Dowsing, a seconder in Councillor Wharehinga. It is option 2. And then there was some direction made in regards to our CEO, who will be in charge of negotiating and working with neighbours, the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust, and council members to get the best outcome for our submitters, as well as our Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust and the community. And then instruct the CEOB to determine the final terms of the lease. So all in favour, hands up, and keep it up until I've written it down. So it is, it's unanimous. Okay, so that is carried. I think, oh, sorry, I can't do the chat box and the phone and the, so this is carried. So at this stage, we ask and instruct our CEO to make the best and make this work and negotiate. And we also, I want to take this opportunity to thank our submitters today, and also thank the Tairāwhiti Adventure Trust for the work they do on our behalf and our community's behalf. So what I'm going to ask now is that councillors will take a break for half an hour, because everyone is at home, and then we come back for 2 workshops. So I thank everyone for their time and their participation today. We'll talk soon, Councillor Robinson. Thank you for that.
We're coming back in half an hour or 45?
1:30, so I think 30 minutes, because most people are at home.
Yep.
So
cool. 1:30 is good.
in,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.